Welcome back, everybody, to another show of Inside Israel. We're back for another exciting episode. Welcome back, Michael, from all the way from Artsot Brit, the United States of America.
Yeah, it's great.
How was your trip?
Well, it's great to be back home. It was a good trip. The highlight, I guess, was the rally in Washington, D.C. We spoke about that last time.
My favorite part was you and your wife walking through the Mexican. By the way, we retracted. It wasn't. What was it? What did we say?
I thought it was Colombian.
Puerto Rican.
I thought it was Colombian.
Colombian, yeah.
But it turned out
it's actually a Mexican flag. Thank you for whoever put that in the comments. Thank you very much. And by the way, that was hysterical. I watched that just today and I was laughing.
Well, you know, when you're at a pro-Israel rally, okay, based on what's going on in the world, and you see a demonstration with, you know, red and green flags of some people, you know, just kind of holding all kinds of posters, and couldn't really make out the posters yet. You know, obviously we're thinking this is a Palestinian demonstration, and we're walking right towards it. And then, of course, it turned out to be Mexicans. I don't know exactly what they were protesting, but they were giving smiles to us, and so it was interesting.
Definitely a highlight for me, Michael. Thanks for putting that in the last episode.
You know, the real highlight of the whole rally was the fact that there were no counter demonstrations. There was no violence. In fact, the police, from what I heard that from a bunch of people, that the police said they never had as many thank yous at any particular rally or demonstration ever. Can you imagine the Jews? There were just 300,000 people.
That's like the Siyum Shas when they finish the Talmud every 7 years, and they had
Madison Square Garden.
Yeah, and MetLife Stadium.
Okay, yeah.
And all the security guards were, you know, blown away by all the gratitude that the Jewish people had.
Bracing for the crowds and the mobs and the fights.
Yeah.
And thank God. So this is a beautiful thing that I think the Jews are bringing to the world. Just the idea of unity and peace and how to be a man.
We're biased, but what a beautiful people.
We are biased. We are biased. But come, you know, learn from us, join us. You know, we have a lot to contribute.
So what are we getting into today, Michael?
Well, you know, when I came back on a Friday, and I didn't get to look into it that much, but the big story on that Friday was this TikTok video of the letter to America of Osama Bin Laden. And somehow, a lot of these leftists, for better, you know, what else to call them, we're reading this letter that it suddenly somehow was being promoted like crazy. I don't know how. Somebody maybe there's someone that controls TikTok was doing this on purpose or not. What do you think? Is there a chance that could be?
Get into it, yeah.
Okay. So they're listening to this letter that Bin Laden wrote to America, I don't know, before he died, about how wonderful it was to kill 3,000 people and why it was justified. And of course, it's all about Israel because America supports Israel, because there are also colonialist settlers, etc. And all these people are saying, having the existential crises of like, wow, now I get it. Of course I get why Hamas needs to rape women, burn children, cut them out of women's stuff. Of course I get. I understand why they needed to take 4 planes and destroy the Twin Towers and in Washington. I understand it. And they're like, we get it. Am I missing something?
Yeah, it definitely seems like the Twilight Zone online, at least.
It took them 22 years to make Americans justify 9/11 and join sides with Al-Qaeda. And all it took was a letter.
I just read Osama Bin Laden's letter to America.
Osama Bin Laden's letter to America.
Letter to America.
Letter to America.
Go read A Letter to America.
Read it.
Go read A Letter to America. Go read A Letter to America.
Life the same.
Blow your mind. Everyone should read it.
I read through all 8 pages. It's so well written and so reasonably structured.
I'm going through like an existential crisis right now.
Existential crisis.
There's, you know, protests happening in the hundreds of thousands and saying gas the Jews. I mean, it's a crazy time for sure. And one has to ask, you know, where is that coming from? You know, where are people getting these ideas? How do we go from Osama Bin Laden being a terrorist to being a freedom fighter? Like, when did terrorists become freedom fighters? You got to look at so many data points like Qatari news, like Al Jazeera, and, you know, TikToks.
Well, like the BBC and CNN, they don't allow the use of the word terrorist because a terrorist is taking a political position. Of a militant, which is ridiculous when you hear about these militants.
It's inexcusable that a person putting babies in ovens, raping women, is not a terrorist, and that is some sort of, you know, moral freedom fighter. It makes absolutely no sense.
It's
absolutely no.
So, like you're saying, what's the first question? If you want to open a conversation with someone about, you know, do you side with Hamas or Israel, or let's understand the issue.
Right. So So the first thing I always ask, I get calls from America all the time from my outreach days, you know, my community building days, where people call me and they say, like, what's going on? Like, what does it look like on the ground? And one of the first things I explained to them very clearly, the first thing I ask people, do you condone or condemn Hamas, their actions on October 7th? They raped people, they put babies in ovens, they decapitated people. I mean, it's just, do you condemn that? If the answer is no, there's no conversation, right? I'm going toe to toe with that.
Bye-bye.
I'm going toe to toe with that. That person is a terrorist. They're literally, their moral backbone is aligned with terrorists. I mean, it's just absolute insanity. But if they do condemn Hamas and they recognize the evil of their actions on October 7th, now we can have a conversation. And I think the conversation is justified because in a democratic society, everything's debatable. Abortion in one state, person's a murderer. In another state, person's a hero. Euthanasia, the person's a murderer or a hero. Like, every state has different laws, and so everything's debatable. And therefore, in a democratic society, there is no societal moral standard. That's why separation of church and state in America is so important, because people can have their morals separate from the laws which are there to protect society's function.
Yes, but then you'll end up with laws that are immoral. I mean, what happens then? There is a Judeo-Christian ethic, that supposedly the United States, when it was formed, has, and that is based on certain biblical truths and biblical principles.
Correct, but that's all debatable, right? And in a democratic society, it's the rule by the people. So when immigration becomes great, or there's some sort of, or TikTok is influencing everyone to become, more aligned with socialism.
But that's not okay.
Why isn't it okay?
Because you're going to end up with murderers, with being called heroes, being called freedom fighters.
We're talking about TikTok and socialism. We're talking about capitalism versus socialism. We're talking about democracy versus communism. We're talking about totalitarianism versus democracy.
Let me.
So if an outside enemy of the United States can influence the people through non-military means, just by information warfare, which has been happening for 100 years, at least with Russia and whatnot. So what's wrong with that, so to speak? I mean,
should it be banned?
Well, we have free speech. That's part of our societal makeup. We value free speech. We have CNN versus Fox News, right? They're debating all the time. They're creating the ammunition that the enemies of the United States can then just take that and create more polarization in the society.
Right. So it should not be banned.
What shouldn't be banned?
TikTok or any of these things. People.
What do you say? You're actually going to take a stand on this? Okay, let's hear it.
No, I mean, let people use their brains. I'm saying,
what if their brains are in the social media and there's a person in TikTok or a group of people that can literally turn up we know shadow bans exist in Facebook and Instagram and YouTube. We know this from Twitter, right? From all of the COVID stuff, that it's very easy to shadow ban and to elevate others. And so if the influencers of the day are aligned with socialism and communism, and that's against, so to speak, the American way.
Well, it's not really against, because America is a democracy. If the majority
now you're going the other way.
If a majority of Americans decided they want America to be communist, then isn't that what democracy is? And it would become communist, because that's what a democracy means will of the people, the majority of the people. So, I mean, democracy, I don't really want to get into this. I don't necessarily believe, I'm going to get myself in trouble here, that democracy is the end all. Certainly not in Israel. That's a whole other topic about Israel being a Jewish democracy. And we can get ourselves in trouble over here. But really, the state got itself in trouble when it was formed 75 years ago without a clear constitution, and trying to navigate this Jewish democracy, what that actually means. But a democracy means that the will of the people. So if the will of the people want to do something, then that's the way it's going to be. Yes, there's a constitution. Obviously, there's a judicial branch that needs to protect the Constitution, but they can override certain things in the Constitution. They can have amendments, and if 80% or, I don't know, maybe even 51% of Americans wanted communism, I'm sure that could happen. So really what I want to say is that there's only one objective truth. That's Torah. Torah that was given to the Jewish people on Mount Sinai has laws for Jews and non-Jews, but those laws are real. That's absolute truth. We have it. Do you understand? I see you got a big smile on your face. I've got a big smile. We have the absolute truth.
I'm with you. I mean, I'm definitely, with you on that.
We got it.
But we were also fortunate enough to do research and to have time and be able to think about these things. not everyone in America is making time to ask the big questions like, does God exist? And if he does, what's the purpose of life?
Well, let me just throw this. They're all going to be fast-tracked when the Mashiach comes, okay? I didn't want to get messianic here. But, yes, we need to teach people. We need to be a light unto the nations. First of all, a light unto our own nation, which, thank God, now the light of Torah is seeping and shining to these soldiers. I'm shifting topics. I don't really want to shift, but I do want to mention how amazing it is that these soldiers are wearing tefillin, phylacteries, and prayer shawls, and they don't even understand what they're doing, but they're connecting to that absolute. They know they're connecting to the absolute.
It's not just the soldiers. I
Which-
think citizens and also military leaders and governmental leaders are also
Right,
they're putting on
That's
tefillin
true.
too.
Right,
Yeah.
Yes, that's true. So the world will be fast-tracked, and we'll get very quickly. I think we're in very messianic times here. I think that we're not far away, and then everyone will recognize the ultimate truth, will recognize that the Torah is true, and will recognize their role. How do you deal with these issues in a society when your society is not based on something absolute? So like you said, they can't say it's moral or immoral. They can say it's legal or illegal. That they can mandate in legislation. Whether it's moral or not, that's really only a question that goes back to God, to the ultimate absolute truth. Because morality cannot be something that's debatable.
Right, of course.
I mean, laws in society are debatable, and people can say they think this is moral, but absolute morality is not debatable.
I mean, I don't want to get sidetracked on theological.
Come on,
debates,
let's do it.
But no, I'd say God gave us free will to choose not to believe in God, to choose to believe in ourselves over God and our own will over God. God gave us free will. He hides himself in nature that we should exist. And without that, we would have no free will. We'd be, if God revealed himself entirely, which it certainly at times feels like now, he's turning up the knob of spirituality and the truth of his existence for human perception. That process is something that if he would just flick the switch and turn it, crank it all the way, we would all have no free will. We would cease to exist because we exist at that point of good versus evil, that point of should I or shouldn't I, right?
Absolutely.
That's where our consciousness is.
And that's why TikTok should exist. Let China put it out there, whoever's putting it out there, okay? And let human beings decide, is this right or wrong? Now, these morons that either because they're so stupid and they just go with the leftist, what's hot in the leftist world, which is to be pro-Hamas and pro-Islamic terror for some reason, which I can't really understand. I thought leftists were supposed to be peace lovers, not supporters of butchers. But in any case,
You're going hard on the leftists today, huh?
What?
You're going hard on the leftists.
Listen, man,
there may be leftists in our audience. They want to take it easy.
Well, the good pure leftists are not.
What happened to unity? Suddenly you bring us back to the...
Listen. We're in a war here. We have a story that the Palestinian Authority is claiming that Israel is responsible for the October 7th massacre.
Perfect example.
Now, I mean, what? I mean, how many videos do you want to see of Hamas terrorists with their own cameras? Not only that we got the footage from them, they were proud of it, showing it. Somehow, how does the Palestinian, supposedly they retracted it, they didn't apologize, but how do you even make that statement? First of all, there's so many things to talk about over here. These are our peace partners, right? So the United States wants that the Palestinian Authority, Abbas should now rule Gaza. Okay, so the people that are going to rule Gaza are the ones that don't even blame Hamas for doing the atrocities. Imagine what they're going to do. I mean, it's so crazy. The world is nuts. So what, we're going to, they can express their ridiculous opinion. It's so absurd. It's not, but we have to fight it. We have to show them how untrue it is. And they're their own worst enemies because...
Michael, you sound so biased.
Of course I'm biased. I'm
biased.
biased.
You're just biased.
I'm biased to the truth.
These are the conversations I have.
I'm biased to the truth.
I'm on LinkedIn, and we're duking it out back and forth. I went back and forth with the chief culture of UNRWA, the chief culture officer of UNRWA. He's living in Ramallah, and we're going back and forth. And he accused me of being biased on the topic. I'm like, you're literally employed by UNRWA.
Right.
But people will call you biased because you live in Israel, you grew up, you're Jewish. And therefore, you're not an authoritative voice on this because...
So who is?
Well, the pro-Palestine, the pro-Hamas people will listen to what you said and say he's a liar, he's biased, he's lying through his teeth, he's buying the Israeli propaganda.
We can say whatever. We don't expect them to agree with us. It's the people out there in the middle, and I think this is an important point.
That's why I'm bringing
part
it
of
up.
what we're doing with the show.
When you have Republicans, you have 40% Republicans, 40% Democrats, but the way to win an election is the 20% in the middle.
I think it's bigger than 20. It's not just Democrat, Republican. I think there's
in an election, in a general election, but a similar type of thing would happen here, like pro-Israel, pro-Palestine. Okay, some people are decided. They'll look at what you just said.
The bulk are not decided. The bulk just are sort of listening to all this information. It's hard to believe that anyone in America would actually believe that Hamas has the truth. I mean, that Hamas has morality, that Hamas is correct in what they did to so many Jews, so many Israelis. I mean, it's mind-boggling that anyone could take Hamas's side. But, you know, like I said, free will. You know, you get to choose, you get to decide. We need to get the truth out to that middle, and I think it's a big middle. Yes, you know, America has been relatively supportive, or, you know, gives a bunch of digs to Israel along the way about, you know, what's going to be the future and a lot of different conditions, et cetera, et cetera. But by and large, they've been supportive. But I would think any normal person with normal intellect, you know, that's really looking at this thing objectively, come to the conclusion that Israel is the good guy and Hamas is the bad guy. It's literally good versus evil.
I wish you were right. I don't agree. If it's okay, I mean, we can do.
It's not okay, by the way.
We can pull out the pom poms and do the rah rah system.
No, it's good versus evil. It's not good versus evil.
No.
What?
Not in their minds. Again, if you have people who are already convinced that Israel is a colonializing country, that they don't belong in the land at all, and that it's a tragedy that they're going to have to go, but they have to go because it's a morally just cause for the Palestinians to, you know, literally march them into the sea. I've had conversations on campus with students, with, you know, Muslim students that I initiated the conversation with them, and I had these conversations with them. They literally said, it's sad what the Jewish people have suffered through thousands of years, but I'm like, well, have you ever been to Israel? They're like, no. Have you ever been to, like, Sheikh Jarrah or, you know, Nachalat Shimon, Judea Samaria? Have you ever been to these places? No. But she has ancestry back to, you know.
Okay, so these people need education.
Okay,
they're also
but from their perspective, they're already convinced that you're sucked into the Israeli propaganda machine.
Okay, they're convinced, but they're not looking at the facts.
So then what are they looking at? And that's my point. No, 1 second. That's my point.
They have a bias.
No, they have TikTok. They have TikTok. They have Instagram. They have social media, and they're looking at. I'll give you a concrete example. It's important for people to understand this, because I'm in there, like, you know, debating and putting stuff out there. Not everyone's in there, and I've seen the people living in Gaza, the same corridor that Hamas murdered the civilians trying to go south to avoid being caught up in the bombing in the north, and Hamas murdered the people fleeing. There are people on TikTok and Instagram who go up and down the street showing the dead bodies, explaining that it was Israel that did
Right,
that.
of course.
Now, if your tribal instinct is with the Muslim, and you see that, again, we're not rational beings, unfortunately. By default, we're emotional and we're wired for survival and all these things. And there's plenty of studies. If you want to check out David Eagleman at Stanford University, fascinating studies that he's done on tribalism. But if you identify with Muslim and then you see the Arabs that are in Gaza, then you are going to have a really strong empathetic response, neurologically speaking, to seeing those dead bodies as they're framed.
Of course, they're being fed misinformation. Yes, of course.
And they're human. And they're human. They make human mistakes and errors.
And there's also identity politics, and anything that the leftists go with, they go with, and whether it makes sense or not. And
which is super interesting, because in Madison, Wisconsin, they just had 20-something Nazis walk across campus to the State House. I just put out a documentary on anti-Semitism on campus by tribejournal.org. It's at that university. And then I saw the Nazis walk. I said, what in the world? You realize the danger that's happening? How does a Hamas-run Gaza make propaganda campaigns and target the extreme left, LGBTQ and whatnot, that they then become part of the identity politics of the Palestinian cause?
I'm not here despite being a trans woman. It is because I am a trans woman. That's my duty to be here right now.
Every Nazi watching that, they must also be like, How did they do that? Oh, that's how they did that. These extremists are hating Israel. They're probably, they probably said now's the time to actually get some publicity here and hate Israel too.
There's another topic I wanted to just briefly bring up.
Go for it.
Up in the news now. Should the IDF flood Hamas tunnels? Now, okay, we know that we have the terrorists in there. We know we got to get rid of them. We know even the United States agrees that they have to be destroyed. That means killed. The terrorists need to be killed. Hamas terrorists need to be killed just like Nazis need to be killed. But now it comes into issues of, how do you do it? First of all, you have the hostage issue there. That makes it very, very difficult. If we can put the hostages aside for a minute, is it morally okay to just flood the tunnels? People say, you're drowning these people to death. It's such a horrible death.
There's an article asking the question, is it morally
Let me read to you. One of the options the IDF is considering to strike a decisive blow is to flood its vast tunnel networks with seawater. A columnist wrote in the Washington Post after interviewing numerous military sources. So this now becomes a moral issue. Flooding the terrorists with seawater. I don't know. Is that any different than just taking guns or bombing the thing out? No, somehow bombing is okay because that's a legitimate weapon, but flooding them out is not okay. I don't know. To me,
there's a moral question. They're asking a moral question, or it's just like an article about how they're talking about it.
If you know the Washington Post, I'm sure there's definitely some angle on it. It's just out there as an issue. And just another issue is what if gas? Could we?
Why is this a question?
One second. First of all, when you talk about gas, obviously the first thing you think about is the Nazis gassing 6 million Jews,
or Syrian or Assad regimes gassing their civilians.
A horrific thing.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, all these terrorists have to die. Okay, so really, what's the difference?
That's why I don't understand what I didn't read the article, but
I'm not.
Should we read the article?
For me, killing these terrorists in the most efficient way is, I think, what Israel should do with the least risk. Of course, the hostages has to be first and foremost, but certainly also the lives of the Israeli soldiers. Many soldiers are dying now. I just went to a funeral. Look, I would say that, yes, civilian casualties are horrific, even for Gazans, for Arabs, for anybody, for any innocent person. However, Hamas is responsible for it. When they parade around, the story came out yesterday, there were pictures of Hamas terrorists literally holding onto children's hands. They were literally human shields, not just human shields, like actual human shields, like they were holding children's hands, blocking them to protect them. That's what's going on. It's horrific if children or if any civilians die, but at the end of the day, the responsibility is with Hamas. Our responsibility in Israel is to protect our own civilians, not so that there can never be a horrific attack like what happened again. And we have to do whatever. We have to wipe out Hamas. We have to kill them. If they are harboring civilians and children in order to protect themselves, I don't think we have a moral responsibility we need to do what we can, but at the end of the day, if we have an opportunity to destroy these terrorists, we have to do it.
Clearly under international law, if they're targeting the terrorists, then they're okay.
Right.
And according to our moral standard, which is the Torah, which we believe is the moral standard, the most compelling case for a moral standard, it is also okay. But in the democratic societies, or when they are Arab societies or Muslim societies that have a clear bias against Israel, then that becomes a question. And I think that's what we're seeing in the media today.
Absolutely.
We'll come back to that.
We need a whole episode about that. But next week we have a special episode.
Oh, yeah. Next week.
Hopefully, if it happens.
Make sure you hit the subscribe button now so you don't miss it. It's going to be, if we're able to pull it off, it'll be an interesting.
And if we don't, then you didn't hear this.
Right.
But in either case, whatever we'll have next week, it will be interesting, and hopefully you'll learn from it. And please send us the comments. Send us your comments.
Michael, there's been so many awesome comments. I've been really, I don't know if you've seen them. I go in there and I respond. I try to read hundreds of comments. People are really active on our YouTube channel.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So thank you all. It's really wonderful not to just see a view number and to actually have conversations with you all. And we appreciate your time and spending this special time with you. And we look forward to seeing you next week.
Giving you the view inside Israel. We got it. See you next week.